an old man, childless, and once the disappointment of his father, becomes a master swordsman. He is summoned to the imperial order by a former student who he thinks is stunningly beautiful. Now, he must leave the countryside and travel to the capital with this woman to become a master in the city. A middle-aged man practices his skills with a wooden sword. In front of him, his father laments, seeing children running through the yard, that he should have had grandchildren by now. The younger man complains that he should be the center of attention at this moment, and the elder states that the boy's technique is great, having taken him on as a master 20 years ago. Returning to his grievance, he comments that the younger man has no consideration for family. Soon, the man training is greeted by his enthusiastic students, and he states that taking care of the dojo and finding more female students is a significant act of consideration. Besides, he has no idea how he could have children when he hasn't even married yet. The father suggests that perhaps one of his female students might be suitable, but the sensei makes it clear that the dojo is no place for romance. By the way, this is a simple dojo that has taught the art of the sword for generations. The teacher was born there and, as far as he can remember, has always played with wooden swords. Little changes in this place, and the man does what he can to keep everything running. As a boy, his dream was to be a swordsman. He had above-average ability and good speed for his age, but none of it was enough. In any case, the man does not complain, feeling that he is exactly where he should be. He may not be the best, but he has a knack for teaching. Later, as class ends, the master reflects that many of his students have pursued very successful careers, which is a great source of pride. When he goes home to grab something to eat, his father is still harping on about becoming a grandfather. The old man asks if Fren, his wife, wouldn't love it if Beryl found a wife to give them a little grandchild. But the woman thinks everything should happen in its own time, and it's not right to rush things, although she's sure that one day their son will have children for the grandparents to dote on. With that, Beryl realizes that his mother is neither siding with his father nor with him. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. Beryl answers and sees a young woman in armor, mentioning it's been a long time since she last saw her master. Her name is Alucia Citrus. The teacher invites his former student in and serves her tea. His father comments that the girl always sends letters, so he knows she's been promoted to commander of the Royal Order of Knights, meaning Beryl did a great job. By the way, the sensei asks what the young lady is doing there, and she explains that she's also teaching fencing. Therefore, she came to inform him that she recommended Beryl as a special instructor for the order, and the appointment was approved. The sensei thinks it's some kind of prank, but the knight presents the official document for him to sign. Beryl's father warns in advance that his son will die if he doesn't sign that thing, and Alucia corrects that it won't go that far. But really, the trainer will face serious consequences. Anyway, she came by carriage to take Beryl to spend the night in the capital, and tomorrow they can talk more calmly. The man is confused by all this happening so fast, but since the dojo isn't open tomorrow, the father also pushes for his son to go, especially because he might get lucky and take this beautiful young woman as his wife. Beryl gets annoyed and tells his father to stop joking, as there's a significant age difference between the two, but Alucia herself acts as if she wishes the teacher had taken it seriously. In the end, the instructor gets into the carriage and heads to the capital. He notices that Alucia has the same sword he gave her when she graduated from the dojo, something he does with all the students who finish the course. Despite being happy for the consideration, he wonders if that old weapon is suitable for a commander of the order, but Alucia insists on keeping her present close. Hearing this, Beryl finds it amusing that she still seems to maintain that childlike idea that the teacher is always better than the student, which makes no sense, especially since he's too old now to be the important instructor she needs. Despite this, the commander is excited about the possibility of a countryside swordmaster finally working in the capital, and is sure her former teacher will do a great job. By the way, she herself thinks she needs to improve to deserve the sensei's consideration. But, taking advantage that he didn't hear this last part, she preferred to leave it at that. Soon, the two arrive in the capital of Baltrain, and Beryl is happy to be back after so many years. After being dropped off at the inn where he must spend the night, he observes the various shops and people and thinks he's too old for this. The next day, Alucia explains to her men that she summoned Beryl Gardinant to be the special instructor of the Order of Freedom and states that Beryl is so strong that not even she can match him. With that, she calls the professor to address all those soldiers, which makes him break out in a cold sweat. After gathering some courage, he starts his speech, hoping to be useful to everyone there, and that the partnership between them will be a success. At the end of his speech, one soldier asks another if they should be concerned, and another seems angry. When the men are dismissed, the commander praises the new instructor's speech and explains that he must train the knights 3 or 4 times a month, which should not interfere with his work at the dojo. Speaking of which, a knight named Kirani arrives running to meet her former teacher and recalls a scolding from the commander. Beryl is impressed to see that the girl has become a true knight, but she explains that she still has a long way to go. The professor remembers that Kirani trained for 2 years at the dojo and worked hard to get where she is, and she's happy to have the opportunity to train with her master again. When he returns home at night, Beryl feels happy to have 2 former students in the order. Upon entering the door, he is surprised to see Randrid there inside, another former student who came with his wife and child. Despite the joyful moment of reconnecting with another old apprentice, Beryl's father says no one needs the son there, and he should stay in Baltrain to dedicate himself to the new job and only come back when he has found a wife. Despite his reservations, Beryl sits down at the table to talk with Randrid and learns that the young man is giving up his adventurous life to move to the village now that he has become a father. The professor thinks it's a significant life change for someone of the platinum class, and Randrid feels somewhat guilty since it was the sensei's training that got him there. On the other hand, Beryl recalls that he trained the boy for 10 years, but it was Randrid's own effort that shaped him as an individual. After all, adventurers may earn well, but it's a risky profession. Beryl's father mentions that this must be a stroke of luck, as Randrid is familiar with the dojo's training style and could take on the former teacher's responsibilities if he assumes the role of master. With that, Randrid Paddlerock commits to serving as needed, and Beryl is left trying to understand how all this happened so quickly. Certainly, his old man convinced the boy to take over the dojo while he was away. To make matters worse, the elder invites the family to spend the night there, and Beryl mutters that it's his house. When dawn breaks again, the professor shares the story with Alucia, who pretends she didn't like what happened, since she actually wanted to keep the sensei close to her. Beryl apologizes for having brought the commander to find a place for him, since the inn where he stayed is too expensive for him to afford. Taking advantage of her unrestricted access to the area, Alucia shoots her shot by inviting the man to stay at her place, but watches the ball go out as soon as the guy refuses the offer, as if it were something from another world, or even a weird joke from young people. Alucia doesn't give up and invites the master to lunch, hoping for at least a disguised meeting, but suddenly, a woman on the street comments that the order's commander is walking around with a man who looks like a coward. Beryl overhears this and hides his face in embarrassment, imagining it's not good for Alucia's image to be seen with an old man like him. Immediately, Alucia has Lysandra shut down the idle chatter, and they continue walking, but the meddler insists and questions how the commander dares to call just any ordinary guy master. Beryl notices that the woman carries a black class adventurer's plaque, something he has never seen before, until Lysandra finally realizes she's in front of Master Beryl. In turn, the man doesn't recognize the girl, which she expected, since she hasn't seen him in 20 years. Nevertheless, he tries to rekindle the memory of the old teacher by introducing herself as Shurna Lysandra, who was taken in by him when she was very young and received sword lessons. At that moment, Beryl remembers the young Shurna from long ago when he found her lost by the riverbank and took her into his home, besides offering training. After so much time, Shurna reveals that she would love to share the success she's had in life with the professor, but never had the chance. By the way, she questions what Master Beryl is doing walking with Citrus. Then the commander herself flares up to explain that the sensei is now a special instructor of the Order of Freedom, and the two are looking for a place in Baltrain for him to live, not one to back down from a fight. Shurna provokes by responding that it makes sense for the guy to be an instructor, but thinks she could help with lodging much more than the commander, having once been an adventurer's broker. As evening approaches, the two finally find a place for the professor, who thanks both for their help, although he wishes they would respect each other a bit more. Ignoring his words, they walk out the door after saying goodbye. Then Beryl watches the two walking down the street from the window, reflecting that he's no longer of the age to enjoy a move to the big city life, but it's good to have former students looking after him. The following morning, a skilled knight displays all his power by simply breaking his opponent's wooden sword and winning the fight. After the duel, Alucia Citrus announces that Master Gardnet will be responsible for the lessons from then on. Rejecting the new teacher, the powerful knight argues that one needs a certain level of strength to become an instructor of the Order of Freedom, so he needs to prove his capability. Beryl asks who this arrogant man is, and Citrus explains that it's Henblitz Drought, the vice commander of the order. With that, the vice challenges the sensei to a duel, and the superior accepts as a way for the master to show his worth. Thus, even against his will, Beryl steps into the middle of the training room for the confrontation. Around, other knights doubt that this rustic professor can teach them anything, which even Beryl himself doesn't dispute. Drought states that it's very kind of the commander to want to boost the old master's morale, but even kindness can lead to mistakes. Again, even Beryl agrees with this, but promises to do his best not to lose too badly, as it would look really bad for Alucia if he got a brutal beating from this unbearable brat. Finally, the duel begins, and Drought takes the initiative by charging at his opponent and delivering several blows. Blocking each one, the sensei recognizes that it would be disastrous if he got hit by one of those, so he maneuvers his sword to transform the next block into a counterattack and strikes his rival's chin with the pommel of the weapon. Having done this, he asks if the student is all right, which infuriates Drought even more. After this move, the two return to their initial positions, and Beryl regrets having struck the blow, since his initial intention was to have stopped sooner. In his mind, this is an unforgivable attitude for an instructor. Before the second round, Drought already warns that he won't fall for the next cheap trick, so he charges again with even more force. Defending properly, Beryl knows that the boy is stronger and faster than him, but his movements are very linear, meaning easy to predict. Counting on this, the sensei anticipates the next strike and pushes the opponent away. Drought gets even angrier and prepares his famous move in the order for destroying the opponent's sword. However, after actually attacking, he realizes that Beryl had disappeared from his sight, and, before he knew it, the instructor was behind him with the sword at his back. After the crushing defeat, the student makes a startled face in the face of such incredible skill, but soon yields to the power of the sensei and acts as if he were his #1 fan, shaking the man while begging to learn that amazing technique. Later on, it's actually Drought who organizes the outing and proposes a toast in honor of the teacher's nomination at a tavern. Moreover, he apologizes for his earlier rudeness, but Beryl understands being questioned since he was a stranger who suddenly appeared to train the battalion. After a few drinks, Alucia bluntly tells the deputy commander that she warned him. Beryl Gardnante is formidable and should be respected. Curny comments that the officer really knows how to drink, just like the deputy, but she herself only drinks occasionally and can't keep up with the frenetic pace of these two. Henblitz again emphasizes how impressed he was with the teacher's technique, and Beryl replies that Drought's technique matched his style, but the young man doesn't believe it was just that, because the way the sensei used the last move to his advantage was otherworldly, and the knight would love to know the secret to doing that. Beryl then shares that he simply matched his rotation with that of his opponent. Curny remarks that it sounds easy when put that way, and Alucia agrees it is, but only for the master. Beryl adds that anticipating the next move is also important, and that if Drought had been less rigid, he certainly wouldn't have won. Hearing this great tip, Henblitz states he is eager to work with the new master. Meanwhile, in the village at night, Beryl's father thanks Randrid for his help. The young man responds that nothing makes him happier than helping Master Beryl conquer the world, and the elder stresses that his son deserves better than this village, and Randrid adds that he has seen many things as an adventurer, but has never met a swordsman better than Gardnet. On this, the instructor's father agrees and hopes that his son will reach even greater heights. A week later, Master Gardnet was leading another training day. Early in an exercise, he humbly interrupted a pair practicing to advise one of them to adjust their distance from the opponent. When the soldier didn't quite understand, the instructor stepped in to demonstrate. If the opponent focuses on your sword, they won't notice you changing the distance. Although it might seem trivial, it's worth remembering that even half a step could determine whether you survive a real conflict. After he finished teaching, Beryl noticed that everyone was paying attention, as if he had just reinvented the wheel, despite it being such a basic concept. After the training, Henblitz followed the tutor and handed him a towel to wipe the sweat from his face. As he did so, Beryl reflected that their eagerness to listen might stem from the recent duel with that soldier, since Drought is highly regarded among his peers. Kiruni arrived shortly after and asked if the sensei was free that afternoon to show him around the capital, given that he was from the countryside and might be lost in the big city. Since the girl mentioned it, Beryl thought it a good idea to take a tour and get to know the area, and the girl was excited to guide the teacher. At that moment, he reflected that he was doing well so far as an instructor, at least for now. Meanwhile, at a meeting with the High Command, the battalion commander was informed that the Order of Freedom's plans for the period had been approved, and she was to submit her budget to accounting. Changing the subject, they inquired whether the instructor was meeting expectations, and Alucia Citrus confessed that he had even exceeded them. After the meeting, the officer pondered that one could indeed become a commander if they aspired to master the sword, as the profession consumed much of one's time. Anyway, she couldn't leave her master where he was. This reminded Alucia of when she first met Beryl Gardnet. Her family had moved to a neighboring town where Beryl's dojo was located, after hearing glowing recommendations about the local instructor. Her parents thought it was a good time for their daughter to learn self-defense, especially since the order didn't closely monitor the rural areas, so knowing how to defend oneself was always a great option. At her mother's request, young Alucia greeted the new sensei, who responded with such kindness that it left a lasting impression on the little girl. Soon after, the child began her training with basic moves, and Beryl explained each detail with great patience and care. He trained the girl's movements to be more efficient, in a rigorous routine that was all new to Alucia. For a year and a half, her training focused on these fundamentals and kata practice. Young Citrus never tired of this routine and felt increasingly strong. Gradually, the sword became comfortable in her hands, but best of all was the sensei praising even her small achievements, which made the student very happy. One day, during an exercise in the dojo, Alucia wondered why Randrid was taking so long. After interrupting the training with this student, Beryl announced it was time to practice attack moves, and the girl was excited by the opportunity. However, as she faced the teacher in a battle stance, the apprentice simply felt there was no opening to strike. She pondered for a while, but decided to try her luck with a strike. Effortlessly, Beryl dodged the girl's sword and subdued her within the first minute of the fight. Despite this, the sensei praised her instinct, believing she had acted at the right moment rather than attacking randomly. Today, Alucia understands what he meant, but at the time, she thought all fencing instructors knew how to do what her teacher did. On another day, Beryl took his students to a friendly competition at another dojo, where they would duel with no contact and no strikes above the neck. Randrid started a fight against a local student and won with the first counterattack after the opponent struck recklessly. The next representative from Beryl's dojo was Alucia Citrus, who, as soon as she took her battle stance, noticed her opponent had more gaps to attack than the defense of a poorly performing sports team. The rival tried to hit the girl any way he could, and she dodged effortlessly. The boy managed to unbalance her with one move, but she easily defeated him on her first attack. After this exercise, on the way back, Beryl emphasized the importance of practicing against different styles, so Alucia asked if their dojo was as strong as it seemed because they had won their duels hands down, and Beryl had even won the competition against their master. Nevertheless, the sensei replied that it was a matter of alignment between styles, and the student should think about what she learned, not who won or lost. Hearing this lesson, Alucia remembered that she had forgotten something at the dojo and ran back to retrieve it. Upon arriving, she was surprised by a group of local students who surrounded the girl with unfriendly faces, deliberately holding the item she had lost. When she tried to take it from the boy, he threw her hair accessory to the ground and told her to pick it up, claiming that their fight was just a silly simulation and didn't mean she had won or anything. After all, none of them would ever lose to a mere country girl. With that, their leader tried to strike Alucia, but Beryl was back in time to block the blow, which was no soft pat on the back by the look on the sensei's face. By the way, Beryl confessed that he didn't like the way these kids used fencing. When he was attacked by the boy, he took the sword from his hand and pushed back his friends with a few non-harming strikes. The most heated one didn't give up and grabbed a sword from a companion to resume the fight, but their master arrived to scold the kids, making it clear that they could all gang up against this guy, but they would never be able to touch him, and that Gardner's students were simply better. End of story. Beryl asked the dojo master to calm down. After all, his apprentices were just going through a tough age. Then the man bowed before him and took responsibility for the poor behavior of the boys. In turn, Beryl felt embarrassed and thought this was an overreaction. On his way home, he mentioned having a bad feeling when Alusha returned to that place, and fortunately, he had decided to accompany her. Nevertheless, the student felt guilty for her teacher getting hurt, so he took responsibility for letting her go back alone. Instead of scolding her, he apologized for being careless and putting her in danger. Alusha began to cry, so Beryl invited her to grab some food to ease the situation. The child might not have said it at the time, but the real reason she cried that day wasn't out of fear or sadness. It was because she realized that when emotions take over, tears are hard to hold back. Some time later, teacher and student faced each other in another simulated duel. Beryl Gardner took a deep breath and initiated the fight, but it was Alusha who took the final step, managing for the first time to subdue her master by maneuvering around his sword and rendering him. It was on that day the sensei handed over her personal sword, feeling she was ready, although she thought otherwise. However, Beryl was convinced he had nothing left to teach her. Alusha thought her master was so humble that he truly believed what he said, but she was sure she was still far from being like him. Regardless, the girl accepted his decision and took her sword. Holding that real weapon, the apprentice simply didn't want to leave the dojo forever, but also didn't want to trouble the sensei with her internal conflict. After leaving her nest and spreading her wings, Citrus decided to prove that her master's skills were unmatched. When she tested to join the order, the vague feeling she had became a certainty. Alusha easily passed her trials, and neither the other candidates nor the order's examining board matched her master's speed, and the young swordswoman joined the institution with top marks, further solidifying her belief. The quality of vision and reaction speed she had learned were unparalleled within the academy, and this mastery convinced her that it would be a waste to leave the man who taught her everything behind in the countryside, away from a responsibility that could elevate him to a level worthy of his talent. Alusha quickly rose to the rank of commander and achieved much, and when she gained the authority to hire an instructor, it had been years since she had left the dojo, but her master remained the same as ever, or rather, he had even improved, aging like fine wine. Some might think the woman is exaggerating, but she wanted to prove that her teacher deserved recognition. Thus, she took it upon herself to undertake this mission. Back in the present, Alusha returns to her men, then asks Henblitz how today's training went. He reports that Beryl never ceases to amaze the guys with his technique, but that the teacher had gone out to explore the capital with Kirani. Alusha feels a pang of jealousy, as she had intended to do the same for a real date. But since her subordinate didn't hear what she said, the commander decides to let it go. Speaking of those two, Beryl is impressed by the size of the city's market, as it is much different from the village he comes from. Kirani suggests that he should visit the West District, but the master thought the North District had more tourist spots like the palace and the church. However, the girl explains that only country folk like those things, so Beryl realizes that he really is just a country bumpkin lost in the big city. Suddenly, the two are approached by another former student of the professor in the market. Kirani instantly recognizes Feis and greets her friend enthusiastically. Honestly, Beryl doesn't remember who she is, so the girl pretends she's going to cry with the harsh reality, and shows her farewell sword to jog his memory. Well, this proves that this person completed training at his dojo, so Beryl racks his brain and finally remembers he's facing Faisal, noting that he didn't recognize her because she has changed so much. Feis shares that she has grown a lot in the 5 years since leaving the dojo, and the sensei questions whether she really trained in the last 2 years with Kirani. Kirani joyfully shares that her friend is now the star of the magic corps, which confuses the former teacher, since he teaches swordsmanship. Speaking of which, Feis mentions she came to buy some magical accessories like this fire ring. Kirani comments that even a beginner can cast spells with it, as long as they have the money to pay, of course. However, Feis lights a big flame on one finger and makes it clear she doesn't rely on that to do what she does best. Beryl is surprised and comments that the girl really turned into a witch, and she proudly replies that she dedicated a lot to achieve this. Few people become witches, meaning it's indeed a great challenge. The professor reflects that it's a pity his former student abandoned swordsmanship, but he's proud she reached where she did. Suddenly, an ugly creature steals a bag from an old lady in the market and dashes away. Beryl and Kearney rush to stop the thief, but Faisal asks to handle the situation and casts a spell from her sword that ties the thief's legs like a rope, immobilizing him. Beryl is impressed once again with the witch's trick, and she explains that she simply put magic in the sword and let her talent do the talking, meaning what she learned in the dojo is still useful to her. Definitely, this fills the master with even more pride, as he feels his work was not in vain with this former apprentice. In the early hours of the following day, Gardnet goes out for a walk before sunrise, a habit he cherishes, especially since he needs to stop being an old country bumpkin and mingle with the city folk. Therefore, he decides to head to the commercial area in the West District, as he promised he would take Feist and Kearney out to eat and needs to find a nice place. Out of nowhere, a very short girl does everything to catch the man's attention, who thinks she's a lost child. This offends the girl, who introduces herself as Lucy Diamond, commander of the Magic Corps of the Liberus Kingdom. Beryl thinks the little girl is delusional and responds that the local kids have some strange games, so Lucy tires of being treated like a child and summons flames in her hand to prove she's not born yesterday. Convinced, she emphasizes that walking is even more fun with company, hinting for him to accept her presence on this pleasant early morning. Thus, the two continue their walk, and Lucy shares that she learned from Feist that her master was in Baltrain. She also emphasizes that her colleague's magic is very good, but she also possesses excellent sword technique, so she believes the teacher made a difference there. Beryl asks if the young lady would like to learn something similar, and Lucy corrects him that she is older than the man to be treated as a child. In any case, she leads him to a sort of arena on a vacant lot where a building once stood. She then tells him that she loves magic so much that she trains every single day to become stronger, and now it's time to test what she has learned so far. Beryl agrees that it's important to assess where we are in our learning, but he didn't expect that he would be the scapegoat. Moreover, he finds out when he dodges a fire spell from the commander, who attacked without warning. With a smile on her face, she praises her opponent's reflexes and displays a circle of flames around her body to show she is not joking. Seeing no way out, the swordsman unsheathes his weapon and positions himself for the confrontation. Ironically, after attacking, she asks if the guy is ready, and he admits he's not, but he needs to protect himself anyway. Lucy reminds him that it's important to see how much they've evolved, and that she's a good opponent for that, but it's Beryl who doesn't think he's a good adversary for someone to test their powers. On that note, Lucy gathers all the flames into a single ball and hurls it at the swordsman, deciding to settle the matter herself. With a not-so-agile leap, the seasoned teacher dodges, becoming barbecue. The mage continues to hurl fire after fire at her target, always with a smile on her face. After feeling the heat increasingly throbbing around his body, Beryl now needs to prepare for a new challenge. Lucy Diamond has just conjured ice spheres to throw. Nonetheless, displaying all his brilliance, the sensei masterfully cuts through the frozen projectiles, and Lucy acknowledges the guy is strong. When she resumes conjuring flames, Beryl charges at her, but keeps in mind that he can't hurt the girl. So, all that's left is to knock her out. The professor tries to hit the opponent with the hilt of his sword, but she wraps her body in an incredible chain of fire and retaliates with a rain of flames, proving even more challenging for the adversary. This time, the threat comes from above and at a dizzying pace, severely hindering Beryl's chance to protect himself effectively. Mockingly, Lucy asks if her colleague has ever faced a witch before, and he confesses it's his first time. In his opinion, swordsman and witch is the worst combination possible. Then, escaping the rain, Beryl sees a huge ice sphere being thrown at his head. With great effort, he stops the sphere with his sword and hurls it at his rival, who shatters the ice with her fire. Beryl takes advantage of the smoke to attack unexpectedly, but he himself is surprised by the electric magic the witch uses to repel the man. From there, she boasts about having saved the best for last, then begins to conjure around herself a bizarre layer of dark energy so dense it prevents Beryl from moving. Obviously, he knew he'd be in deep trouble if hit by any spell in that situation. But to his surprise, Lucy Diamond gives up on continuing her attack and stops the conjuring, arguing that this spell wouldn't work either, since none of the others had. On the other hand, Gardnet would like to know what would happen if he were hit at that moment, and she reveals that he would be crushed into minced meat. although she had adjusted the power to leave the opponent slightly minced, perhaps like an omelette. Anyway, the witch acknowledges that the swordsman is strong and understands why Feis admires him so much. But Beryl is sure the witch would have had human minced meat for lunch if she had gone all out in that fight. For although he's been on this road a good while, he still hasn't defeated his old man to this day. That is, he has a lot to learn. The witch finds the guy's humility amusing, especially since he doesn't even seem to be upset about the cowardly attack he received. About that, he admits it was a drag. Then the girl bursts into laughter. Beryl reflects that it's impossible to be angry at someone like that, and Lucy invites her colleague to drop by the Magic Institute any day. Besides, she'd like to learn the spells she learned from the sensei, but he dismisses this possibility right away. The next day, after giving his training, Beryl is surprised by the presence of Faisal, who came to deliver some potions to the order, as the Corps of Magic typically sells such items to this organization. Beryl comments that these potions are quite useful, and that he usually uses more of the herb ones, so Feis gives him one of the bottles, saying it's an apology from Commander Lucy. Confirming that the little girl is indeed an officer, the professor does not hide his astonishment, and Feis explains that Lucy uses magic to appear young, but that no one knows exactly how old she is. The man takes the opportunity to comment on the fight the two had and admits he almost turned into minced meat. And the girl replies that Diamond is indeed a prodigy, since normal witches don't cast spells in sequence, but she can. With that, Alucia Citrus approaches and thanks Feis for the delivery of the potions, then the mage withdraws to finish the job. Soon, Alucia asks the professor for a minute of his time to make a proposal to him. Joined with Suriana Lysandra, they invite the professional to train new adventurers on a request documented by the leader of the adventurers group. In this service, Beryl Gardnant must assess the abilities of these students before the first attack on the dungeon, as well as train them for emergencies. Beryl remembers that he himself was quite interested in the career of an adventurer, because depending on what you find in those labyrinths, you can indeed make good money, so he threw himself wholeheartedly into that field. Thinking to himself, he also remembers getting thrashed by a monster and running back home. Therefore, he argues that dungeons are dangerous. Lysandra assures him that the people will be fine if trained by him, and Alucia confesses she is not at all pleased with Lysandra's invitation, but understands it's a good way for the professor to train his skills. Although the two think alike, Beryl notices they seem to have a feud and doesn't understand the reason for it. In the end, Alucia asks that the tutor at least hear what the leader has to say, as the order gives complete freedom to special instructors, so the choice is entirely up to Beryl. Following that, Lysandra takes Beryl to a meeting with the boss, and there was Lucy Diamond for some reason, feeling completely at home and having a nice little tea. Lysandra explains that the commander of the Corps of Magic knows the leader of the adventurers group well, while the leader himself introduces himself as Nidus, who believes his organization is in good hands, since the instructor before him has the support of Lysandra and the twin swords of the dragon. Lucy comments that she also spoke highly of the professor to Nidus, and Beryl concludes that no one cares about his opinion there, it seems. Next, the group leader introduces Majin, his assistant, who will be responsible for providing all the details Gardnant needs to know for the job. Before that, Majin wants to confirm one thing. He knows that Gardnant has the support of the commander and a black class, but he believes that having an amateur participate in an attack is not wise. Embarrassed and relieved, Beryl sips his tea and celebrates the emergence of this hero to free him from this burden. Outraged, Lysandra accuses the assistant of disrespecting the master, while Lucy questions whether the man does not trust her word. Majin replies that the adventurers group is responsible for all decisions made and that there have been reports of unusual monster activity recently. Therefore, it is important that the candidate proves his worth for this difficult job by dueling with Lysandra and the twin dragon swords. Beryl is shocked, although everyone else present thinks it's a great idea. Nidus asks if the sensei is willing to undergo this ordeal, and he awkwardly agrees. Thus, the leader of the adventurers group drags the master to the training field at the headquarters, where the organization's members are surprised to witness a battle between the famous Lysandra and a middle-aged man they do not know. Already regretting being there, Beryl reflects that this woman is a black class adventurer. In turn, the girl seems very pleased to finally challenge her master, something she had been looking forward to for a long time. This brings the adventurer back to a memory from her childhood when she was riding in a carriage filled with goods that would earn money for 76 months if sold in that region they were heading to. The girl's parents understood that the life of a merchant was very difficult, but they had faith that they could provide a decent life for their daughter. Suddenly, their carriage is attacked by a ferocious creature that tears apart the coachman. Shurna, Lysandra's mother, urges the girl to run away through the back to escape the beast. But the monster overturns the carriage and causes Shurna to fall from a cliff into a river below with a very strong current. Sometime later, the child woke up and saw for the first time the man who would become her master, Beryl Gardnet. She was rescued and taken in by him at his home, where Beryl cared for the girl so she could recover. At one point, when he asked what had happened, the trauma trigger of the little girl was activated, and she lost control of herself, as if the mere chance of remembering the event caused her physical pain. At that time, Beryl still lived with his parents, and while everyone wondered what happened to the girl's relatives, Beryl asked the homeowners to let him take care of Shurna until she found a new home. Day after day, Shurna was apathetic, irritable, and spoke little, but people showed patience with her and kept her under their care. One day, Shurna opened the window of her room and saw Beryl training with a wooden sword. Seeing that the child was interested, the man encourages her to try, and this experiment soon became a habit in the girl's routine, who grew up alongside the one who would become her master in the art of the sword. Together, the two practiced and developed in each other's company, and this blossoming relationship was the most important factor for Shurna to regain confidence in her life. After some time training only at home, the little girl got the opportunity to attend the dojo, and since then her life changed when she wore that uniform and felt she belonged to that universe as one of Beryl's official apprentices. Always kind and respectful, the sensei praised the student's speed and believed that one day she would do well with the twin swords. As days passed, Beryl and his parents found a new family for Shurna, but they made it clear when she left that their doors would always be open for her to visit. Moved, the girl thanked her master for everything he had done and left in tears with her new family. In fact, Shurna Lysandra wanted to have stayed at the dojo forever, but she thought it would be selfish to ask for more than she had already received there. 20 years after leaving Beryl's home, Lysandra quickly rose in rank in the adventurers group and reached the gold class at a young age. When asked why she became an adventurer, she said she wanted to see the world with her own eyes. On a particular day of her life, the carriage she was protecting was attacked by a group of bandits, who, according to her escort companion, were led by a notable swordsman from that region. Nevertheless, without a second thought, Lysandra charged at the bandits and defeated them all with ease using her twin swords. Indeed, she did not become an adventurer just for the reasons she mentioned earlier. In addition, her desire was that as few people as possible go through what she went through, in addition to the mission of putting into action everything she learned from her master. Now, facing the man who gave her a new life, Shurna Lysandra greets the sensei in the same way she used to do when she was a child, and he smiles seeing that she remembers how they used to do it. Whether or not she was his student, the teacher thinks the best way to show respect to her is by providing a worthy confrontation. At that moment, Lysandra attacks from above with her wooden twin blades. Beryl is forced to stay on the defensive against such above-average speed, and the level of quickness she reached, although Beryl knew to some extent, reached a level that left him astounded as he struggled to block each attack that was launched. The thrill of facing her master, on the other hand, disrupted the adventurer's rhythm, who couldn't hit the target, but she already imagined she wouldn't be able to even if she were in her fullest condition. Regardless, the girl's dream was to face the sensei with the strength she has today, and the act of realizing this wish makes the woman's face break into a smile. Meanwhile, Beryl evaluates every move of the former student and mentally praises the endless stamina of this warrior who never stopped practicing her skills at all costs. But amid this, he discovers a weak point of the opponent, then sticks his sword in the handle of Lysandra's weapon and disarms her left hand. Then, he takes advantage of the element of surprise to throw his opponent down and pin her to the ground, declaring his victory. The adventurers around were ecstatic after witnessing the impressive duel, and Nidus admitted it was incredible. Lysandra, as always, praised her master's strength, though he acknowledged that he would have lost if the fight had lasted another 10 seconds. He realized that the girl hadn't fully mastered her left hand yet, and she admitted she needed to practice making it as powerful as her dominant hand. Lucy arrived, laughing at the sight of the instructor giving advice to an advanced class, while Majin apologized for doubting Gardnet. Humble as usual, Beryl thought these things happen, as Nidus entrusted the novice adventurer's training to the master swordsman. Thus, Beryl regretted not being able to refuse the offer in the end. The next day, Lysandra introduced his first apprentices. The young man in the middle was named Porta, the girl was called Nidri, and the boy on the left was Sarlicat. Porta and Nidri were bronze class, and Sarlicat's was silver class. At the beginning of their training, they stormed into a cave, and Sarlicats identified 6 enemies approaching through a magical accessory. Without delay, 3 goblins ambushed to catch the humans off guard, but the young fighters easily defeated them. Beryl thought these guys didn't even need him, given the way they fought. Hours later, the dungeon had been completely scoured, and its monsters eliminated. On their way out, Beryl commended the apprentices' performance, as did Lysandra, but the advanced class found it strange that they had encountered so few enemies, as it was usual to find many more. Suddenly, Sarlicat's magical accessory broke, and out of nowhere, a winged creature struck Porta with its claws. Faced with what seemed to be a griffin, Sherna had no doubts. It was a specially designated target, known as Xenograble, likely the reason there were no more monsters around. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.